You tell me when you're going to die, and I'll give you the perfect financial plan. I don't know yet, based upon the size of your assets, whether or not you're going to run out of money or not, and potentially outlive your money. But the flip side of the conversation is, could you have retired earlier? I want to know that now.
When you need some advice, never sacrifice, always get it right. Ask the Planman. Finance, insurance, and more.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ask the Planman. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein, and I believe everybody deserves to have a plan in life. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. I want to be proactive. I want to be able to bring you financial literacy, guidance, education to help you make the best financial decisions when it comes to your investments, your planning, and your insurances. Today, I want to get a little deeper dive into the retirement planning conversation. You're going to see some other episodes out there, but today I want to talk about one of the core conversation pieces I've had with clients when it comes to planning for their retirement. And there's a simple letter, the most important letter, not to be confused with the letter now for Twitter. It's the letter X. And I've been talking about X factor being the most important piece of information. Did I mention Allie, my producer's with us? Allie, welcome to Ask the Planman. Allie, the biggest, most important component of people's retirement planning, in my opinion, has been helping them understand their personal X factor and how that implicates and impacts the success for their retirement. And I want to best I can demonstrate it with, I don't have a teleprompter here. We'll try and get that eventually on the show. But I want to demonstrate best I can how the X factor determination and understanding is so critical to the success for people's financial plan. And then we're going to talk about the next component of it is what happens when their lines cross. So those are the two buzzwords for today's show. So let's start out first and foremost in understanding what goes into somebody's X factor. And as you've heard me talk about on other shows, there's three components that each and every one of us have some control or influence on when it comes to their financial plan. First and foremost is their budget, how much they save and how much they spend now in accumulating to retirement, and then as important in retirement. So spending, your budget, something you can influence. Second, how much time until you plan on retiring? What's your timeline? You want to retire at 55? You want to retire at 65? You want to retire at 75? Everybody has a different woody woofy. What do you want for yourself? When do you want to retire? What's your personal timeline? You have a say in potential control. The third component is the amount of savings or return your money's going to make. If you make 7%, you're going to get here. If you make 9%, you're going to get there faster. If you make 15%, even faster. But then each of those comes with different risk. So when I have a conversation with a client and I talk about the things that they can control, the next question I ask them is, Allie, which of those is non-negotiable? I really want to retire at 62. Okay, well, we're going to calculate your financial plan based upon you retiring with this budget at age 62 and this rate of return that you've indicated your comfort zone is. Well, guess what? It doesn't work. You can't retire at 62 based upon those other two variables. So now you either have to cut your budget in retirement, meaning spend less, or you need to save more, which means you got to cut your budget now and put away even more money, and that may not be capable. Or you need to raise the rate of return on your portfolio. Now, if you're a CD investor and you like to sleep at night and you're making 3% on your money and that's all you ever want, well, then that's going to be a non-negotiable, isn't it? So the non-negotiable just changed. So the non-negotiable now becomes the rate of return, which means at that rate of return and that budget, you can't retire at 62. It'll be 72. And then that's going to be their fate. That'll be their determination. So you have to have those components going into the conversation in the essence of the plan to figure out how much they need and are they going to get there where they want, and is all of this accomplishable? And that's the ebbs and flows in the planning process. Now let's roll that into this X factor conversation. When you work, your revenue usually comes from some kind of job. Whether you work for yourself, you work for somebody else, you've built a portfolio of passive income and rental properties, whatever it is, your money has to come from somewhere. You have to build and establish it. So most of us go out and work. We get paid for what we do. We take a percentage of that money and we put it away. We spend some of it, we pay taxes, and we invest. Over time, that builds our lifestyle, our first car to our fifth car, our first home to our fifth home, our first kid to our fifth kid, whatever it might be. Life goes on. We have to raise our income. We have to raise our standard of living. There's inflation. There's taxes that are always going up and insurances and all these pressures. So as we're channeling through, we get to the finish line, and now we're walking into the retirement conversation of, I'm going to retire at 65. Great. So now, what is your X factor? Well, Ali, when you stop working at 65, where is your revenue going to come from to meet your lifestyle? What comes as available to you to replace your job, to replace your income? Now, again, in today's world, people, they're not really retiring like they used to. They're going to consult. They've built up other revenue streams. Ali works for herself. I work for myself. It may not be as simple as that, but if I worked for AT&T for 40 years and now I'm retiring, what am I getting? Well, I might have a pension, although pensions are pretty much removed these days. If I'm a school teacher, I'm probably going to have a pension. But most of corporate America doesn't have pensions anymore. If I'm a federal employee, municipal employee, maybe. So my income can come from a pension. My income can come from Social Security. And then my income predominantly comes from where, Ali? My nest egg, my portfolio. I have a 401k, I have IRAs, I have a Roth, I've got some real estate portfolio with some rental property income, whatever it is. But all of these components make up your income. And so the X factor is the amount of money that you need to generate from your assets to offset your expenses. You have a pension, you have Social Security. Let's just say, let's put some numbers out there for people. Let's say they need $5,000 a month for their budget. They get $1,000 from Social Security, they get $1,000 from their pension. That's $2,000 of the $5,000. How much are they short? They're short $3,000. Where's that $3,000 going to come from? It's got to come from their nest egg. Okay? So their personal X, Ali's personal X in that scenario is $3,000. She has her portfolio, whatever it is, she needs to generate or remove $3,000 a month to go along with her pension and her Social Security. If inflation goes up and her $5,000 budget becomes $6,000, her pension and Social Security are probably not keeping pace. Now, instead of taking out $3,000, she needs to take out $4,000. Follow me? Needle's moving. As time goes by, more and more money needs to come out to fill the gap. So the X is ever changing. It's a monthly change. It's an annual change. We talked in another episode about your annual reviews. Well, how was my budget for the year? My cable bill went up. My gas bill went up. My power electric bill went up. My food bill went up. Do I have enough money coming out? So eventually, when your X factor hits a wall, the portfolio is no longer able to meet the income demands. And so, again, in another episode, we talk about the CD cycle, where we had clients that strictly invested in CDs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year CDs. Rates were at 8%. They went to 5%. 5% went to 3%. 3% went to 1%. If I'm a retiree with $1 million in CDs and I was only living on the interest, I used to get $80,000. Then it went to $50,000. Then it went to $30,000. And then it went to $10,000. What's she going to do? Her bills didn't go down. So her X has gone negative. Her lines are crossing, which is the next buzzword we talk about, is I need to know my X factor. And more importantly, or as importantly, I need to identify when and if my lines might cross. And so what does that entail? Well, that means that now the revenue, income, performance from my assets are no longer sufficient to meet my expenses. And I can't, nor do I want to cut my expenses. I'm not going to sell my car. I'm not going to sell my house. I'm not going to stop taking vacations. People can make conscious decisions to do that by all means, and some will. But if they want to maintain their lifestyle, they're going to actually have to now go into principle. So when your lines are crossing, this is the first moment in time that you've had to invade principle, not just live off of the interest or performance, but now you tap into the principle. So in the scenario of the little old lady buying CDs, she had $1 million of CDs, used to give her $80,000. Now interest rates go to 5%. She's short $30,000. She can't cut her expenses. So now instead of rolling over $1 million of CDs, she has to take $30,000 of principal to meet her bills, to keep her lifestyle. So now at the bank, her new CD is $970,000. She's not making 5% on $1 million anymore, so that income's going to go down another couple $1,000s. She rolls over the CDs. She pulls $40,000 out because she was short $40,000. And now eventually she's short another $50,000 in the third year. So year after year, she's now cannibalizing her principal. The $1 million is now $900,000. It's now $800,000. How worried are people going to get if they start to shrink their assets down by having to cannibalize it? Forget market performance. There's no market here. She's in a CD. But the CD rates have changed. She's cannibalizing. She can't cut her expenses. Now she has to sell her house. She has to downsize, maybe reverse mortgage. She's got to make some decisions here. You have to have conversations. But the bottom line is this is disruptive to people's retirement. Most people don't want to have to deal with this. So you should know this going into your planning, right? This is why you're planning. Now, if I've got $50 million and I'm short 50 grand, I'm not really worried about my lines crossing, am I? But for the lady with $1 million that she's short 50 grand every year, there's a problem. If she lives 20 years longer, within 10 or 15 years, she's going to be out of money, right? Unless interest rates change, unless she does something different, she makes radical changes to her lifestyle. So in the world of planning, when you're sitting down and there's number crunchings and there's calculators, and why we tell people, you really need a professional. It's not about what's in the data. It's understanding the data, and it's having these conversations, and it's pinpointing and circling for them in the plan. Allie, Glenn, this is where your lines cross. Now, Allie, if I told you your lines crossed at 85 years of age, would you feel that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I'm assuming I'd be okay because that's a pretty long life, right?
So I ask this to every audience, and the answers are always mixed. And then I give the interpretation, and it's my interpretation. So if you think about this, you retired at 60, 65 years of age, you're never had to touch principal, and you're 85. And for the first time, you have to start touching principal. Now, it's all relative to how much principal you have, right? But you've heard me say it before. I'll say it again on this episode. You tell me when you're going to die, and I'll give you the perfect financial plan. So at age 85, if you're touching your assets for the first time, I don't know yet, based upon the size of your assets, whether or not you're going to run out of money or not, and potentially outlive your money. But the flip side of the conversation is, could you have retired earlier? Could you have spent more in retirement? Could you have taken less investment risk? What if your lines crossed at 72 and you still never had fear of running out of money? I want to know that now. I don't want to be 85 and sitting on $17 million going, I could have retired earlier. I could have bought that second home in Vail. I could have taken that round the world cruise. I know you at the time you don't have kids, but I could have taken the grandkids to Disney every year if I like. What do you want to do differently with this information? I don't want to wind up at 85 and say, shoot, look at all the money I still have.
Yeah. And this is perfect because we actually just dropped episode 54, where we talk a lot about planning for life expectancy.
This is the key component here. That's why we're doing this standalone on X Factor to tie it in for everybody. This is a puzzle. I'm trying to give people in small bites and episodes pieces of the puzzle. And I don't expect them to go do it on their own as much as call me or call other professionals. But these are things to make people stop and think differently. I'm an outside the box guy. I've been doing these talks since the 90s and helping clients see the big picture of how all this stuff goes together, because most people have insecurities and fears of running out of money, not understanding how to distribute their money. They're good at getting their money built, saved, and accumulated, and they don't know the back end. Mm-hmm. And they won't retire early because they're afraid. They don't understand, where do I get my health insurance? What do I do with the distributions? Oh, I'm not 59 and a half. I can't get at the money. False, wrong. You can take early distribution on your assets. There's rules to get out 401k and IRA money before 59 and a half without penalties. People don't know about it because it's not mainstream. But there's calculations called 72T, which allows you to take money out before the age of 59 and a half and avoid penalties. So if Mark Zuckerberg has $50 billion in his 401k and he's 50, you don't think he could get at it? Of course he can get at it without penalty. He's got to follow the protocol, but yeah, he could tap that money. If I want to retire at 50, the government, you won, dude. You're allowed out. Here's how you do it. Okay?
Yeah, and to add to that note, I know you can also take loans on 401ks.
Only an active 401k at the employer, but yeah, and that's up to $50,000 usually. You can borrow money, you pay yourself back, but that's usually as you're an active employee. So if you've retired, no.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
You can't borrow from IRAs. You can't borrow from inactive 401ks per se. So, but yeah, the 401ks have, again, not to go down the rabbit holes, there's ways to get money out under emergency purposes, first-time home buyers, college, medical emergencies, things of that nature, where you can get at some of these assets without the penalties. Always the tax. The tax never goes away if they're pre-tax accounts. But yeah, there's factors in there. But the loan is an easy one. But if people put their money in an IRA, like they left their job and then rolled it to their 401k to an IRA, you can't borrow against the IRA. Mm-hmm. There's no mechanism for it. So it's usually an active employer-controlled, sponsored 401k that. And by the way, not all of them offer loan options. The smaller plans may not. So there is an option when we enroll clients in 401ks. You could actually not offer a loan provision. So
we got a whole nother podcast episode stewing right here.
Folks, I got 38 years of doing this nonsense. I know way too much, and we're going to slowly get this stuff out. So, Allie, X Factor, lines crossing, the things you can control. You need, let me put a bow on it. Your lines crossing are so important to understand when and if your assets might cannibalize and how fast your money might decelerate. Now, the back end of this conversation, we can do further shows on, because this is where I then get into the long-term care conversation. Because when you're 85, you'd say, yeah, I feel good about that. I still have my $2 million. But why did you hang on and want to have $2 million at 85? Well, because now I'm going to need potentially long-term care. I'm going to need nursing home. I'm going to need assisted living. I'm going to want to do and have services because as I get older, my health is failing and that expense is massive. And so I've put aside that $2 million in anticipation of needing it here. But again, what if you don't? What if you just didn't wake up one day and now the $2 million sat there and somebody else gets to use it? And so we put long-term care coverage in place to leverage their revenue, their cash flow, their assets, so that, again, we're back to the umbrella. The rainy day has come. You're 97 years of age and you need a nursing home. Who's paying for it? Well, I got this policy here that's going to pay for it. So I could have used my assets earlier. I could have spent it down. I could have done all these other things. I don't have to be a fear of running out of money if I have a long-term care policy in place to fill that gap later. Planning. You need to plan. These tools are out there. So if you could protect for the rainy day, now it puts you in control. Could you retire 3 years earlier? Could you retire 5 years earlier? Could you raise your budget by $10,000 a year and take an extra vacation? What would you do differently? Folks, the whole component of what planning does is it points you in a direction and shows you your future. It's the crystal ball showing you your trajectory of where you're going. If you don't like where it's going, today's the first day we can fix it, Allie. I can't tell you, dummy, you should have bought Microsoft at its IPO in 1980, whatever. You should have bought Apple when it came out with Steve Jobs in the 70s. Like, those opportunities are gone. I can only deal with today. And so you can take corrective action today if you don't like where you're going. So when I tell people, again, one of my many lines in my seminars, today is the first day of the rest of your financial planning life. Today's the day you get your shit together. If you haven't put all these things together, today's the first day you can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always me, and it's too late. It's never too late. You can always improve from where you are. You need to take those next steps, but you have to understand how all this stuff correlates. And that's the problem. Finding advisors, whether it's insurance advisors, investment advisors, financial planners, whatever people call themselves, who truly has mastered all of this information. I do this show because I've been doing this 38 years. I constructed my ideology in counseling hundreds and hundreds of clients over the years in this ideology of understanding and education. And from it, they've then built successful financial plans that they've engaged. Now, I can't control the markets and I can't control performance, but I put clients in a position to succeed and understand the psychology of a lot of these things and how to not panic when the markets crash and how to put assets in protective areas and understand X factors and rules of 72 and lines crossing and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, is give people all this understanding. And that's the backbone of Ask the Planman.
I think this brings up a really great action item we can leave folks with. Which is, what questions should they be asking so that they're informed not only about, X factor and crossing the lines, but making sure that they're picking the right partner to partner with?
Well, I'm not going to give them those questions. They can go watch all 50 whatever episodes and get their own question. No. Look, I don't, how do you interview somebody? I can't help everybody. The whole purpose of doing the show is one to many. I counseled hundreds of families one-on-one. I love what I do. I still help people in certain regards. But the whole purpose of doing what I'm doing is one to many. And the one to many in my hopefully speaking engagements and book that I'm working on and more material coming out, and certainly using the social media, the YouTube world, and putting all this stuff out there, is to educate people on a mass level. This is stuff Susie Orman doesn't talk about, and whatever the other guy's name is, drawing a blank, to Dave Ramsey, Ken Fisher's only going to manage your money. They're not financial planners. Everybody's got their spin and opinions. Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, they all have different baseline hooks or principles. And so I'm trying to separate myself with the Plan Man, because the Plan Man's about planning. It's not whether I like annuities or don't like annuities, or I should be in stocks or not in stocks, and, give opinions if I hate this. They all have opinions on certain things that they just don't like or agree with. And that's okay for them, but it's not okay for the client in that situation. As much as people don't like annuities, the annuities have saved my clients bacon time and time again, based upon market fluctuations, market corrections, and crashes. And so you can't say it doesn't work. You have to understand if it's right for you. That's the difference. Okay? You like to smoke. I don't like to smoke. I'm not saying Allie smokes, everybody. You made a choice. People vape, people, take edibles. Everybody, you have to make your own choices. Nobody's here. I don't judge. I might opine, but I don't judge. And I'll tell you if I don't think something's working for you pragmatically, financially, that's my job. I'm not a yes person. I'm going to tell you what I think because you're asking me to give you candid, blunt response, right? And input. So I tell people, you're not hiring a yes person. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. And if we need to have a coming to Jesus conversation, we're going to have a coming to Jesus conversation. Your shit ain't right, and this is how we're going to fix it. Either you're in or you're out. If you want my help, this is what you got to do. Otherwise, go find somebody else to placate you. I'm not here to placate you. I used to get paid to do the planning work, get paid to manage people's money. If you're paying me to do the work, you better be listening and doing what we're telling you to do. So now if I'm going to bring in a financial planner that's going to charge you and do the planning work and help you put that together, you better listen to what they're telling you to do, whomever you're doing, which is why the difference of free versus fee never works. Because without skin in the game, nobody takes it seriously. So over the years, I always charged for financial planning work because people need skin in the game and they need to understand the importance of it. So if they put their money on the table, they're going to show up to the meetings and they're going to listen. If it's free work, they're blowing me off. They don't show up and they're not implementing. And if they don't implement, Allie, if the doctor said you have an ear infection and here's the medication and you'll feel better in 3 days and you go and you throw the prescription in the garbage, did you hurt the doctor? You're the one suffering with the ear infection.
Oh yeah, and it'll be worse than an ear infection if you do that.
Right. Okay. This is what you need to do to your budget. This is what you need to do to your portfolio. This is the investments that you should be, doing. This is your allocation. This is your insurance needs, whatever it is. That's what you're paying these advisors to give you, is guidance and advice and recommendations. Now, if you want to double check it, if you want to verify, if you want to get second opinions, like anything else, if I got a cancer diagnosis, God forbid, you think I'm going to talk to a couple different doctors and get different opinions? Yeah, of course. So if you feel you need and don't trust the advisor you're working with and you want to get a second opinion, then go get a second opinion. But don't sit on your hands. Do something. Be proactive, right? We talk all about the show. Planning is proactivity. I'm all about being proactive. So that's it. I'm off my soapbox.
I'll use
take the quiz. So tell us about the quiz. Yep. We're going to have the quiz.
That's exactly it. I was about to use that as a perfect opportunity to plug the quiz that we're dropping, which should be live by the time this episode is out. So if you want to find out where the gaps are in your financial plan, insurance plan, etc., then hop on over to the site and take that quiz.
So this will be on our website?
Yep, it'll be on the site.
All right, so it's WeinsteinWealth.com or AskThePlanman.com, right? Either one will take them to our website?
Yep. Yeah, we'll link it to the podcast page so people can get access to it.
Yeah. All right, Allie, thank you so much as always. I enjoy having you join me. It lets me really go a little bananas here and talk and get a lot of stuff out. It's amazing what just comes out of me as I get going. So I appreciate you having me with me. Folks, this is another episode of Ask the Planman. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein. Again, I believe everybody needs to have a plan, proactivity in life. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. We don't want you to fail. There's a lot of advice out there. How do you pick your own nuggets? What do you do with this information? Do something. That's my message. Just do something. Don't stand still. I said it earlier in the episode. If you don't like where you're heading down the road, forecast in the future, today is the first day that you can do something about it. Go out there and be proactive. So until next time, if you need some advice, always get it right. Come ask the Planman. Please like, share, subscribe. Tell everybody about the show, and we'll see you next time.
When you need some advice, never sacrifice. Always get it right. Ask the Planman. Finance, insurance, and more.